being joined by Kenneth Kuttner from Massachusetts. He is professor of economics at Williams College in Massachusetts. Professor, welcome to WION and thank you for joining us. President Biden says that he's feeling good about the agreement being reached. Do you think that it will be possible for both leaders to sell this deal to their allies in Congress, where Republicans control the House and Democrats control the Senate?
Well, that's a good question. That's really sort of an imponderable. As you noted in the introduction, there are a lot of opposition on the Republican side. A lot of the Republicans feel that it's not sufficient. The budget cuts are not sufficient. A lot of the Democrats are unhappy about the nature of the cuts being proposed. But I should say at the outset that really the battle is not about budget cuts per se. It's not about the size of borrowing, size of the deficit at all. It's really more about the prioritization of the policy. So for the actual money involved is really quite small. And as you noted in the introduction, it would simply keep spending flat for a year or two and would not really entail any cuts at all. So, but really, this is a way for the Republicans to get certain policy changes that they have felt very strongly about, such as denying the IRS some funds for tax enforcement, for imposing work requirements on our food stamps program, and decreasing the regulation associated with environmental permitting. So really, these do not have a very big budgetary impact at all. These are just ways for Republicans to push their favorite policy changes.
Yet, how worried should we be if the debt ceiling isn't lifted by June 5th? After all, that's next Monday. But on the other hand, it seems no one in Washington wants to be responsible for a default.
Yeah, so how much should we worry? I wish there was some historical experience we could go by that would allow me to answer that question. But really, this is an example of something that is utterly unknowable. We've come close to having come close to defaults before. At one point a number of years ago, we came so close that the credit rating of the United States was actually downgraded by a notch. So some corporations here in the United States actually have higher bond ratings than the federal government, which is pretty weird. But there are really a number of ways in which this might proceed if we hit the deadline and passed it without a deal. The problem, there are certain kinds of expenditures that are not really essential for the government to make. So, for instance, it might delay, pension payments or payments to the pay of federal employees or something like that. And that would be very inconvenient and for a lot of people involved, and for some people it would be a huge hardship, but it wouldn't, this kind of thing that wouldn't endanger the government's credit rating or anything like that. The big problem would be if the Treasury were unable to pay back principal and or interest on its maturing securities. Now you're talking about a major financial train wreck because the securities, Treasury securities, are such a huge part of the financial market. For two reasons. One is that so many other securities are priced off of Treasury. So companies that are taking out a loan or lending money, or banks that are lending money to others, benchmark their rates off of U.S. Treasury rates, which are assumed to be risk-free. So if the U.S. Treasury rate started to be associated with the risk premium, then all those other rates would rise proportionately, and the rates that people thought they were going to get would be changed all of a sudden. But perhaps a more worrying concern is that there's so there are about $31 trillion worth of U.S. Treasuries in circulation, and many of those are used as collateral for borrowing. So a financial institution might need some funds short term, and what we'll do if it has Treasury securities, we'll post those Treasury securities as collateral in the repo market. And if the collateral suddenly becomes defaultable, or there's a risk of default on the collateral, then the whole house of cards would collapse in that $3 trillion market, and then you could expect some severe financial fallout, illiquidity problems. So that's what keeps me up at night.
Well, Professor Kenneth Kuttner. Well, thank you so much for that elaborate analysis, Professor Kenneth Kuttner, joining us live from Massachusetts this morning. I look forward to speaking to you again very soon, and hopefully we won't see that default.
Yes, I hope so too.